This right here is the kind of thing I didn't know I needed in my life, but now I don't know how I ever existed without it. Bret Hart and Corey Feldman are starring in a horror movie together. Here is the official announcement, and I'll sprinkle some thoughts in here along the way. Tales from the Dead Zone, starring WWE Hall of Fame wrestling superstar Bret the Hitman Hart in his feature film debut. And Corey Feldman, and then they mentioned the different movies that he starred in, The Goonies, The Lost Boys, Stand By Me, is slated for a 2020 release. The Goonies is a classic. I watched that movie many times as a kid. I'm surprised they haven't remade that the way they remake everything else. Stand By Me is another classic. The Leeches. I remember the scene with the Leeches in that movie. And also, let us not forget, it wasn't mentioned here, but I'll give it a shout out. Let us not forget Corey Feldman's role as Tommy Jarvis in Friday the 13th Part 4. Believe it or not, I've never seen The Lost Boys. I never did. I don't know why. I heard that it has to do with vampires. I mean, I should probably watch it. I loved Fright Night, which came out, what was it, 1985 or something? I love Fright Night. I think it's one of the best vampire movies ever made. So this sounds like something that would probably be right up my alley. I never saw it. Tales from the Dead Zone is about a medical examiner conducting autopsies on the victims of a horrible car crash who imagines how they may have lived their lives. The anthology links 4 terrifying stories together. All 4 of the stories in the feature film have been shot. We are gearing up now to shoot the wraparound story in the fall, according to the director Barry J. Gillis. Tales from the Dead Zone is a throwback to movies like Creepshow, Tales from the Crypt, and Pulp Fiction. Probably the only comparison that will ever be made between a movie like this and Pulp Fiction. It does sound, based on the description, a lot like Creepshow, which is a favorite of mine, or the old Tales from the Crypt movie, TV show. But you know what the premise made me think of when I read that? The whole idea of a medical examiner doing autopsies on the people who then, they kind of go back in time and they then feature into the individual stories of how they got dead. There was a made-for-television movie that John Carpenter made in the early 90s called Body Bags. Sci-Fi Channel airs it every now and then. And it was originally going to air as a series on Showtime because HBO, I think, had the rights to or helped create Tales from the Crypt, and that was a success. And so Showtime was going to do something similar with John Carpenter. That would have been the Body Bags series. And then they passed on it. This was after they had already started filming. They passed on it. So what they ended up doing was they took the 3 stories that they had already shot, and they had Carpenter play the role of the medical examiner. He was sort of the on-screen narrator in between each of the stories before they would throw it to each one. You saw him in the morgue with the bodies and whatever. But they had a bunch of cameos in the different stories in that movie. You know, Robert Carradine was in one of them, Stacy Keach. Mark Hamill is in that movie. He plays a baseball player who loses an eye in a car wreck and then gets an eye transplant from what ends up being a serial killer. And then he starts to slowly almost morph into that person or their personality. I like it. It's a good movie. I don't know how many people listening to this ever even heard of it, let alone saw it. But if you could track down a copy of it, if you're into those kinds of movies, I actually thought it was pretty good. Continuing on in this press release. There have been skeptics, some skeptics who cannot imagine Bret Hart and Corey Feldman in the same movie. We get messages from people who think it's a disaster. It just boggles the mind. To me, it's been a great idea since day one. Both are true professionals and great actors. I am happy with their performances. That, according to the director. Well, I want to know who these skeptics are. These people wouldn't know a good cinema if it smacked them in the face. I, for one, cannot wait to see this. They already released a trailer, and it includes a couple of scenes with Bret Hart actually wielding a handgun. He looks like a literal hitman in this movie. He's finally living up to his name. But I pulled 2 very short clips here with Bret, with some acting, some audio here from Bret Hart. Here's the first one.
And I know when somebody's fucking lying to me.
That's what he should have said to Vince in that meeting backstage in Montreal before the match was shot. I know when someone's fucking lying to me. That's exactly what he should have said to him. And he should have pointed the gun right in his face.
And I know when somebody's fucking lying to me.
And then there's this.
I am a one-man wrecking crew.
Just give the man his Oscar right now. There's no sense in even waiting until next year. Just give it to him right now. I love it.
I am a one-man wrecking crew.
I gotta try to get that into my intro somehow. That's great. You gotta actually watch the scene, the face he makes too. It's comical. And here's something I don't think I've ever seen before. You can pay for a producer credit in the actual movie. Now, maybe this is standard practice with some of the lower budget movies to help, fund them or offset some of the costs, and I'm just not aware of it. But I've never seen this before. So you can pay for a producer credit in the actual movie. You can get your name in the credits of the film as a producer, and even get your producer credit on your own IMDb page that they will set up for you. An associate producer credit is $95. A co-producer credit will run you $495. An executive producer credit will run you $995, which also carries with it the potential for what they list here on the website for the movie as profit sharing. How much of that profit there will be, I don't know, nor do they, but you can share in the profits of the movie if you spend $1,000. And you can get an acting credit in the movie for just under $2,000. For $2,000, it includes your food and accommodations. Because remember, in the press release, the director said they have not shot the main story yet that kind of wraps around and ties all of these stories together that have already been filmed. And the shooting begins in the fall in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. You can be in the movie if you are willing to shell out $2,000 and you have either an acting reel that you can show them or are willing to film an audition video to show them that you have some level of acting chops, some kind of acting experience. I mean, I acted like I kind of enjoyed Raw this week. Does that qualify as acting experience? I'm seriously, I'm thinking of springing for an associate producer credit. I mean, it's only $95 for the chance to get my name in the credits of a Bret Hart, Corey Feldman movie, or get my own IMDb page. I am tempted to do this. Hey, my birthday is coming up. Maybe somebody can gift it to me. I'm kidding. My birthday isn't until October. But they are literally selling off parts of the movie, parts in the movie. Tales from the Dead Zone. That could be the new title for my Raw review segment here on the podcast.